I really hope that all librarians aren't like Letty Morgan, because I'd really like, at some point, to walk into a library and not be afraid for my life. It definitely looked like she was trying to hide that wooden crow, but why bother? I've seen it dozens of times over the years and never thought twice about it. I even remember thinking it was crooked once and thinking someone should nail it up there tighter so it wouldn't fall off if the wind blew down Main Street. It's funny how you can look at something and ascribe no meaning to it forever and ever, and then one day you see it and in a completely different way. That one crow has sat quietly turning for years while no one paid any attention. Almost no one. My dad was paying attention. So was Gladys. Ojo Bush and Francis Palmer used to pay attention before they died. No wonder, when the crow is going to turn again, and when it does, who will do the turning? Henry wandered up here with a cup of coffee. He didn't exactly startle me when he came in, but Henry doesn't really knock so much as barge. He was standing in the doorway when I realized I had a bunch of names from the secret room written on a piece of paper next to my laptop. Some of the names were scratched out because I had discovered they were dead. I set my elbow on the list. Henry already had his fishing boots on, which my mom hates because they smell like a moldy loaf of bread. He was not supposed to wear them in the house. It made me wonder if he'd worn them to bed. He started talking to me the second he entered the room. I sleep like the dead up here in the mountains. You? I nodded and Henry looked around the room. His eyes looked at the Dark Side of the Moon poster. How can we move that? Trying to change things up, I guess. I remember one of those songs. Used to get stuck in my head a lot. And then he sings a verse off key, which sort of freaked me out. Was that one about the rabbits running and digging holes and never getting to stop? I think Henry was half amazed he could remember the words. I can hear that song in my head like it was yesterday, he said. And then he was a little sad, an emotion I'd almost never seen him display. 2 more days and it's back to the city for old Henry, he went on. Time to dig another hole, I guess, like the good song says. Why don't you just quit and come live here with us? I asked. I think my dad would like that. For starters, your mother would kill me, and my boots and poker, and dragging your dad out to the river 2 weeks a year is pushing things as is. My mom loves you, I say, and I mean it. I'm easy to love for a couple of weeks. It gets a little harder after that. He laughed this comment off, and I think deep down he was serious. I'd never really thought of it that way, but I could see he might have a point. The charm of an old bachelor like Henry probably wears thin after a while. I don't mind him hugging all the time with Dad, but if he were here all the time, I'd mind. I like Henry. Henry's loud voice and his energy and the way he can get everyone to play cards. But there's a twitch that sets in after a couple of weeks, when it starts to feel like he's almost annoying. Henry's smarter than he knows, to leave us wanting more and never overstaying his welcome. I decided to ask him a question. You ever talk to Gladys, the librarian? Henry was leaning against the door jamb. It appeared he was trying to remember the next verse of the song he'd sung. Finally, he refocused. Haven't said a word to Gladys Morgan in 10 years. Me and her had a run-in. If I see her coming, I head for the other side of the street. I thought this sounded like there might be a good story. I prodded him. What happened? What did she do? Let's just say she is not patient as your mother. I stepped into her precious library with my wet boots on, just off the stream, slouched right up to her desk and asked if she had anything on barbecuing a pig. You're kidding. Nope. She looked at me up and down like I'd picked up her cat and thrown it in front of a moving truck. That woman can glare better than all the New York ladies that have turned me down for a date. She so glared. Then, get this, she got out of her chair, came around the desk, and kicked me. She didn't. Not only that, but she told me I better get my stupid pig and my wet boots and go outside and never come back. I told her I didn't exactly have a pig with me. It was just something I was thinking about. That didn't go over too well. Scary thing was, I can totally picture all this happening. What'd she say when you told her you didn't have the pig? I asked. She said if it was between me and a chicken, she could only save one of us. She'd definitely save the chicken. Henry laughed a big laugh again, and I laughed too. That Gladys Morgan, what a kook. I was feeling bold, so I kept going. You ever see Dr. Watts? I asked. He's dead, said Henry. No, he's not. Mom said so. Henry scratched the scrabbled face. I thought he was dead. I haven't seen him in forever. You're sure he's alive? That's what Mom says. Henry seemed a little perplexed. Well, if she says so. Henry looked at the Pink Floyd poster again, and I was sure he'd see it was crooked and wanted to move it. You see that story in the paper about the dredge, he said. Henry had been sensitive to my accident there and didn't mention it. Yeah, I said. They're burning it down. It's a shame I'm leaving so soon. I'd hate to miss the biggest bonfire in 3 counties. But you know how some people feel about me around here. Probably best if I'm gone when that old relic finally gets what's coming for it. I know I've mentioned this before, but Henry used to work for New York Gold and Silver. He'd come out when the dredge was running, way back in the day, to keep an eye on number 42. He hated what the dredge did to the land, but he was young and ambitious back then. He told me as much. He wanted a big career at a big company in a big city, just like a lot of people. Skeleton Creek stayed in his bones long after the New York Gold and Silver went bankrupt. Some say Henry keeps spending all his vacation time here because he really feels bad about working for a company that almost destroyed the town. I think he comes here because his best friend is here, my dad, and because he loves the mountains. I felt a little sorry for Henry when he peeled himself from my room and went downstairs. I heard the screen door flap against the wall and I knew he was going to the creek. So now I'm alone in the house again, and I can't help thinking about how it feels like to live in Skeleton Creek. I've been trying to put my fingers on it for a long time now. No one ever moves here. It's the same old people who keep mostly to themselves. There's a kind of gothic loneliness to everything. You know what it feels like? It feels like the dredge dug the heart out of the town and chunked it into the woods. All that's left are the ghosts walking around. Well, my parents can't complain about me sitting in my room all day. Henry came back and talked me into going down to the creek with my fly rod. I haven't been up to the fishing since before the accident, and I probably had no business standing anywhere near a fast-moving water with a shattered leg barely off of a full leg cast. Henry did most of the casting, catching, hooting, and hollering. I mostly sat in the shade and watched him work his way up and down the best stretches of Skeleton Creek, hooking fish after fish. I have to give him credit. He learned the water and knew what to throw. I've been fishing nothing but Skeleton Creek all summer for years, and I've never caught as many big fish as I saw Henry catch today. That guy's a machine. Being out near the water today made me value it more than ever. The creek is lined with the great big cottonwood trees that filled the air with what looked like snow every time the wind blows. And there's our groves of aspens and trees with white and black and gold leaves, huddled close along the banks of some of the best waters. Those aspens groves will take your breath away. And there's other things, a part of this place that makes it unlike other. All those big piles of rocks and earth that the dredge dug up formed an endless line of rolling hills along the banks of the creek. Over the years, the surface filled with grass and trees and flowering plants. The creek is like the secret paradise no one has discovered way up here. Tucked away in the woods near the ramble shack in town the size of a postage stamp. There are birds everywhere, little creatures scampering and chirping over the hills, larger animals rustling in hidden places nearby. All these sights and sounds today made me realize how much I missed visiting the creek. It gave me a view of things I hadn't thought of before and only ever hated the dredge like everyone else. But right here, right under my nose, this spectacular thing the dredge left behind. It makes me wonder if it is a principle that can be counted on. Good things can be created from bad. I can't stop thinking about the old town of mine just needs a lucky break to start heading in the right direction again. Sometimes after one of Henry's barbecues, or a morning at the cafe eating chicken, fried steak, and eggs, my mom decides that McCray needed to eat a healthy dinner. This is a terrible idea and always puts my dad in a bad mood. Just eat. It's not going to kill you. These were my mom's words as my dad. Henry and I sat staring at the food she placed before us. What is it? Henry was brave enough to ask. He was about half serious and half honestly curious as he stared at the three bowls, clustered together in the middle of the table. That's right. Is rice, I said, pointing to the round bowl in the middle. It's brown rice, my mom corrected, staring at Henry. You're going to tell me you've never seen rice before? Henry had seen rice, but the main dish he was worried about. What about that stuff? He asked. He pointed to the bowl filled with something that looked like green logs floating in a purple lake. You really want to know? Asked my mom, because you're eating it whether I tell you or not. Henry pondered the question, swallowed hard, and nodded. Tell me. Mom scooped a big spoonful of brown rice and slapped it into Henry's plate, and then she loaded a glob of the purple lake water and green sticks over the top. Low-fat yogurt with whole beets, pulverized in a blender and poured over a can of green beans. Eat up. Henry looked like he was about to barf. Last time was a flat pan of green jello with sad little margarine oranges tapped all throughout the middle. Dad put about half the pan of jello on his plate, so there was no room for anything else, and then he sat there slurping miserably with a spoon. Stop that, Mom said. You can't stand it when people slurp their jello. The best part was when Mom took a bite of the crazy concoction and chewed but couldn't swallow because washing it down with a Diet Coke. She tried really hard to keep a straight face, but once Henry took a bite himself, just to be good sport, his eyes started bulging and Mom came completely unglued. We all had a pretty good laugh, and then she let Henry and Dad go to the kitchen and make pancakes for dinner. We sat there, me and Mom, eating jello without slurping. You doing okay? She asked. Yeah. It was nice going to the creek today. I haven't done that for a while. I'm glad you went outside. The fresh air is good for you. I nodded and took another bite of the green jello. I checked your computer last night, she said. It looked clean, a little too clean, if you get my drift. Oh. Maybe Mom knows more about computers than I thought. Well, I erased everything. I was making it look too perfect. Pretty much expected what came next. Have you been talking to Sarah? The big question I was asked in one form or another every day. It could have gotten easier to lie, but the guilt was starting to pile up, so it only got harder. I'm not talking to anyone. It's just like my computer clean. It runs faster that way. Mom looks at me sideways. Now we're talking, Henry yelled. He was balancing some kind of king-size pancake on a spatula in one hand and carrying a handful of papers, plates, in the other. My mother kept looking at me, but Henry saved me from more cross-examination at the dinner table. She left me alone after that, but I had the feeling she didn't trust me. I couldn't blame her. I was worried it would mean she would be watching even closer than before. With school starting in only a week, her radar is dialed up searching for clues. In another half hour, it'll be dark. I can't get out of here. If I go for a walk alone, they'll assume I'm trying to see Sarah. I haven't heard from her all day. I bet she sent me something. The blue rock in the morning. That's the soonest I can try and contact her. As soon as my parents left for work, I crept out the screen door and down the front porch. Henry snored in the guest room, so getting by wasn't a problem. I walked through town down Main Street, passing 20 side streets to shoot off like vines. I was still amazed that this is our whole town. My house more or less one end and Sarah's on the other end. Down the street that doesn't look a whole lot different from mine. I remember when we were 7 or 8 years old and spent the entire day trying to figure out exactly halfway point between our houses. We did it because neither of us liked to walk any farther than we had to, and we thought it was only fair to split the distance as precisely as possible. After hours of pacing and figuring and drawing maps of our town, we came to the conclusion that the old station house for train conductors was exactly halfway between our houses. We would sometimes call each other on the phone and then race there. She won every single time. After a while, I figured out that she tricked me by putting the middle on her side of Main Street and not mine, thereby making it possible for her to use shortcuts we hadn't used when calculating the distance. I think girls are much craftier than boys when they're little. In any case, by the time I figured out the whole distance problem, it was too late. We decided we needed a marker at our spot. First, we found the rock and took both of us to move it onto the station house in the center, just right there. Let's paint it, said Sarah. Why? I said, because I want to paint it. Don't you want to paint it? Sure, let's paint the rock. Why not? Very short conversations say a lot about my relationship with Sarah. She wants to do something. I don't necessarily care one way or the other, so we do it. 8 years later, I've come to discover this is no way to lead a life. It can get you into a lot of trouble. It might even get you killed. It was more out of opportunity than anything else that the rock became blue. It was the color of Sarah's house because she stole an old can of paint from her garage. We didn't have a brush, so we just poured the paint over the top like a hot fudge on ice cream. You know what's funny about this? The paint can still under there too. We didn't know what else to do with it, so we tossed it in the ditch. Someone found it, and it was Sarah's house blue, and someone would tell. The blue rock became the place we met, where we put secret notes and treasured we found and candy we wanted to share. We had secrets like everyone else in town, even back then. We didn't want anyone hearing us talking about the blue rock. It was ours, and it wasn't easy to find. The trains still come through town early in the morning, but it never stops here anymore. It used to, a long time ago, when the dredge was pounding away 24/7, digging up something worth stopping for. But the old station house was already abandoned when we were kids, so we set about exploring it. It wasn't too intimidating, only about the size of a backyard storage shed on the edge of the tracks. It's locked up tight, but the cool thing was you could climb underneath it. The station house was up off the ground for some reason. I think it was the same height as the train conductor when he came by, and the cheapest way to accomplish the extra height was to put Little Shack on a bunch of cinder blocks. Weeds had grown up all around the edges, sort of like a curtain when you could pull back. It was cold gravel underneath, and when you crawled inside, it crushed under our knees. As we grew older, there wasn't much point in us meeting at Blue Rock or leaving secret notes there. I hadn't been back there in years. My legs had already tired and sore from the long walk. The space underneath the station house seemed a lot smaller than when I was 7. I'd be lucky if I fit at all. Did I mention I didn't like confined spaces? I squeezed on my back and slid under through the weeds until I hit my head on the blue rock. It was a big rock, and I hit it hard enough that I yelled. Once I recovered, I craned my neck around and saw a piece of paper taped on to the rock. I took it carefully, removed the tape, and taped my own note onto this slicker blue surface. The note I had written was short. Your parents aren't the only ones watching closely. My mom is on the case too. I think Booner might have said something to her, but I can't tell for sure. She and my dad are very worried about me going to school. I can tell. I bet they've told our teachers to keep an eye on us so we don't talk to each other. I hate this. I'm not sure I even want to go back to school ever. Too many people in that place. Being away from you makes everything feel like it's fading away. I should be more afraid, right? I hope you sent a video. I need to see you, Ryan. I read Sarah's note on the walk home. It was easy since it was short. It wasn't even a letter at all. I wish she'd written me a letter. But Sarah doesn't write. If she can say what she can say in a video. Hey Ryan, missed you. Wish I could see you. Password Carl Kolchak. XO Sarah. Technically it's not even a note, it's just a handoff of some viral information. No punctuation unless you could count dashes and slashes. Who cares? And who's Carl Kolchak? This is the first time she used a password I've never heard of. Anyway, I got home and found Henry on the porch eating leftover pancakes with peanut butter. You don't go down there and throw rocks in my favorite fishing hole, did you? He asked. He seemed genuinely nervous. They had gotten up early and scared all the fish out of his number one spot in the creek. Just out for a walk, that's all I say. The fish are fine. He stuffed a big slob of pancake in his mouth and gave me the best comic evil eye I'd ever walked past. Finally, I got back here to my room and I could write down these words. Sarah's at school and I'm stuck here at home. I already checked out the password online. I'm so surprised I didn't catch it, but then again, the show aired before I was born. I can't expect to know every scary pop culture reference, right? Still, I had to laugh at Carl Kolchak classic. I wonder what Sarah found.